welcome to the show this week, Dave. We've got Dave Wilkins this week, everyone, on this week's episode of Build with Stakki. And Dave, pretty big name these days, bit of a face, very popular guy, running multiple communities, SDR leaders communities across EMEA, APAC, and the US, and just had a big success with Funnel 26 over in the States. Dave, great to have you on the show. How have you been? How's your week?
I'm not a big deal. I just want to make that very clear. I'm merely just a normal person. Yeah, good. Funnel in Austin, Texas was a great success. A little bit jet lagged, but we're still riding the high.
Good stuff. Cool. Well, look, obviously you've got a serious and like a really good background and history in SDR leadership, right? And that's kind of what brought you to, I guess, obviously build these communities. So one of the things I really want to dive in today is how you've seen that leadership role for SDRs, SDR leaders, like change over the last few years. There's more noise in the market. There's more tech, more confusion. AI's coming in and maybe creating fear factor for a lot of people. But just give us like maybe a high level view on when you were in that SDR leader role at maybe Snowflake and some of the previous roles. What did it look like for you? What was the main sort of day-to-day life for you as a leader?
Yeah, so 99% of SDR leaders never get any kind of professional leadership development training or enablement. And when I was at a company called Infoblox, I was very, very fortunate to get first line, second line, and third line professional development training. And I thought and assumed stupidly that was going to be the same at every other company, because why not? Why wouldn't you want to enable your leadership team to be optimize them to make them more productive? And it's just not the case. And so it was quite a bit of a shock, really, when moved to different companies and different roles, and it was like there was nothing there to help any kind of leaders. It was just get on with it, like figure it out yourself. But the professional development training that I received at Infoblox, it would always give me a fallback in terms of performance management, in terms of how to communicate cross-functionally and how to deal with conflict resolution, how to present to executives, things of that nature. And so leadership we don't have that for, as I said, 99% of people. So why we started the community was just to try and give some of that professional development, enablement, and training for these leaders, because they're carrying budgets of over $1 million, even at some of the smallest organizations, all in cost. And so that they can't be a cost center, they need to be a revenue generator. So it's communities like ourselves, sales development leaders in London, SDRleader.com, great communities that are helping SDR leaders, giving them that insights and that help. Which is what everyone needs.
Yeah, and like we see the amount of conversation and like questions and openness that you're having in those communities, right? So it's definitely having an effect, and it shows that you've identified an issue or a problem or a challenge, and you're really helping make an impact for people. One of the key things you kind of mentioned there was like that initial training gave you like a fallback that you could always go to. And then you mentioned like a series of things, but one of them was like talking to executives and like the strategic level. My personal experience was like one of the hardest things I had when I moved to sort of SDR leadership was I could manage the team. I was naturally fairly good at that, and like the day-to-day management, tactical stuff, and like the big shift into the strategic layer of thinking and like that overall leadership, from going from a sort of like my function to the actual cross-business leadership. Like, how would you recommend people start to think about that? Or like, what were the tougher lessons you learned in that side of things?
Yeah, you need to talk two different ways to your team, and to then your seniors. So
Yeah.
it's manager, manage down. And you I've seen many frontline leaders that say, "Oh, I don't want to manage up. That's crap." And it's like, if you have that mindset going into it, then your team will never progress. You will never progress. You'll never get the recognition that your team deserves because you're not articulating correctly the value that your business unit brings. And I think you've really got to speak in two different languages.
Yeah.
So, for an example, I had a team, a prior company, that we would pay our SDRs on meetings completed. Well, sales didn't care. They cared about revenue and pipeline contribution. So I would talk in two different streams to two different people, and I would act as the Rosetta Stone in the middle. And I think that's something that leaders really need to figure out because they will never progress.
Yeah. You got any tips on that then? How do you become that like Rosetta Stone? Is it sort of like exposure? Is it practice? Would you recommend getting a mentor, a coach? What?
Yeah, you've got to have a mentor, and the way that it was described to me is that you want to have somebody who's outside of your business unit and is a couple of levels higher than you. So when I was at Infoblox, I had the head of the VP of sales for America. He was my mentor. Um, he had followed a similar path to me. He had gone into leadership in his early 20s, whereas I came into leadership quite quickly after I moved into B2B SaaS. So he was really helpful in how to communicate and how to convey problems and solutions in a way that executives cared about versus what an SDR cares about on their day to
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that like a lot, and where companies haven't got that leadership, and people, I mean, we get it sometimes actually. People will book calls with us, and really they want the advice on. They think they want the advice on the process and stuff because they feel like they need to go and fix something and justify it back to their leadership. But what actually becomes clear is actually they haven't got real leadership or like real mentorship internally.
No.
And it's why companies like my sales coach are doing so well and stuff. People are finding that externally. And again, it's where your community, I think, is doing so well.
Yeah, we're my sales coach. What we do, it's covering a gap that shouldn't really be there. I mean, if your talent in your business is the most important part of your business, and if that isn't productive, then nothing else will be. So
Yeah.
it should be invested in, and you see the companies that do invest in it are doing well versus those that are not.
Yeah. And that's building for the long term, right? Investing in that, investing in your people, which kind of brings me on to like another thought, which I'd love to get your opinion on. AI SDRs, which maybe seems like a bit of a tangent, but where I still see people who are backing their SDRs is that they want them to be their future pipeline. They want them to their talent pipeline. Sorry, they want them to move up. They want them to become leaders in their own right and stuff like that. And the companies that are leaning more and more into AI SDR world, probably a bit like over at least over dialing on it. There's probably a correlation between those two things, I think. Have you seen that, or do you think I'm clutching at straws?
No, I think you're right. I think there's, especially a couple of years ago when there was a bit more of a credit crunch and and uh, and making sure that the balance sheet at the CFO level is making sense. There was a real drive to see, okay, if I have an AI SDR, I only have to spend a tenth of my total all-in cost in that versus a human.
Yeah.
So of course we're going to get rid of them. But the problem that we had was the technology was marketed really well, but it wasn't ready. And so you've now gone through a period where teams were gutted. They brought in an AI SDR function, like in this kind of classical sense, um, and it isn't productive, and so pipeline is down, revenue is down, and now these CFOs are getting pressure because it's like, well, yeah, our balance sheet is less, but then our revenue's less. So what are
Yeah.
we going to do? Oh, I know. Let's get some of those things called human SDRs. They seem really cool. So we're going through that period at the minute. I had a very I and a quick anecdote. Somebody told me that they were their CRO got rid of all their SDRs and were bringing in an AI SDR vendor, which was very popular a couple of years ago. And I did say to her, "Is your CRO on drugs? Because it will not work."
Yeah.
And lo and behold, that company's revenue is way down, and they've now hired human SDRs again. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just AI is very good for some pieces. I'm sure we'll go into it, but not for that human to human connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spoke to Jack Blair yesterday. We had him on an episode which will come out just before I think this one. He was made really good points about like the thing that we need to protect and the thing that will continue to help teams win is that AI, is that human element. Any AI and tools should support humans
Yeah.
and like make more space in their diary, upskill, like give them more time for training so they can upskill so that all the human conversations are better and better and better. And he was really positive and like he was actually pretty much more optimistic than maybe I am at times about the market.
He's an
Do you see
optimistic.
that?
Oh, Jack's an optimistic guy.
He is. He is more so than maybe me and you, but I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is so then where do you see the market like leveling out now? Obviously you have exposure to a lot of SDR leaders and their conversations. Where do you maybe see that leveling out between human versus AI SDR?
Yeah,
If we only corrected one way or the other.
yeah, I think we've now settled into a piece where AI at the top of the funnel in terms of account assignment, account enrichment, account analysis, um, all that kind of legwork normally takes hours for reps to do. That's now been done in a matter of minutes. And I think that's where we're starting to see the shift. We see Knox have just launched like a platform now where you can do that all in one place. Um, Actively is another. There are so many companies now that have made that little tweak, and now SDR leaders they've also driving that conversation, and so yeah, we're seeing that as a more of where it should be, that kind of top of the funnel. Human SDRs are always going to be around, but there will be less because they'll become more productive because that top funnel piece will be fixed. But for the rest, yeah, it's still humans are going to talk to humans. That's where the win is.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's refreshing to hear someone like put it that way. Like I think people, if you look at LinkedIn, and like we all probably guilty of this, you'll be convinced that AI is taking over and or power dialers are taking over or this is taking over. Like there's always something, right? But actually the balance is finding your own process. What parts can AI like take away from your SDR so that they can have more conversations? It should be, that's maybe an oversimplification, but that's like this gold standard at the moment. And that's what we see working well.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the things you touched on there as well is like, so Nooks have released sort of more of like a AI all-in-one type element to their platform now. And I read one of your your blogs or your newsletter recently about that all-in-one platform becoming more and more to the forefront. And I've seen you speak about it a fair bit over the last year or so. Elaborate on that sort of hypothesis, that what you mean when you talk about that.
Yeah, I think it comes from a couple of different angles, but I think the big thing is customer acquisition cost. How a lot of the venture capital companies I talk to, that's their major concern with their portfolio companies right now, is customer acquisition cost, and how they need to reduce that number of project costs to acquire new business. And I've spoke about this for a couple of years now, about how organizations are, you buy a product and it's starting just to grow and grow, and different use cases get added. But a lot of the time, companies aren't utilizing the full suite of cases that are available. So what's what I think is going to be happening over the next couple of years, especially as a lot of organizations signed up for long-term contracts with dialers, with data providers, is that we'll start to see this companies that have this all-in-one platform. You just need one. You don't need to be buying different widgets and different apps from different companies to build out your workflow. You don't need that redundancy anymore. There are organizations that are giving that all in one. You see Knox, you see Titan X as well. They've just acquired FrontSpin. There's this real drive towards this kind of reducing CAC by just having one platform. So I think that's really I've been talking about this for the last 2 years, and I think now we're getting to the point where it's really starting to accelerate over the course of the next 4 months.
100% agree. And like, I think the other reason and the other benefit for that, and why it's important, and it's why we've like built Stakki, or why we laid it out as we do, we push that everything should integrate back to the CRM, so your reps just work there. And that's pretty much it, because the things that no one really ever measures is that time between tasks, the time flicking between different apps, flicking between different Chrome extensions, all that type of stuff is what like slows down your reps' work, slows down the pace of their work, slows down, like interrupts their attention, their focus. And so you're always like at this like almost like a halted start. Like every prospecting attempt is like, okay, now I'll do it. Now I'll do that. Rather than you want them just like be able to consistently work through their list on the next task. Call this what I'm saying, try and connect. This what I'm saying, try and connect, and just working nice and cleanly through. That all in one is another approach to, I guess, solving that focus issue.
Yeah, and I think what's been really interesting to see is EMEA has kind of been in more of a wait and see mode about how to build this out, and the US has been really they've been figuring this out. So they've got to a point now where they think, okay, this is where we're going to be going, and now it's starting to migrate over to EMEA, which I think is good, because it means then that leaders in EMEA haven't just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in tech and then it's useless. Like there's been that kind of wait and see approach. So I think, as well in EMEA, we'll start to see a lot more of that kind of all in one, one pane of glass, single pane of glass for SDRs to action over the course of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And like maybe rolling it back a year or two, where we kind of had like all these new sequencing tools, multi-channel tools like your outreaches and your sales lofts. And then we had the rise of email infrastructure tools like Instantly and SmartLead, and your LinkedIn automation tools. And then people were using a bit of both of those, and then it created this big mess. And then we have the ongoing, and maybe it's less ongoing now, but then like the realization of you need all this email infrastructure set up, and you need all these different warm-up techniques and all this type of stuff, and it became overcomplicated. Those are now, like, there was an argument to have those separate to the multi-channel tools because that infrastructure was important. But now some of these newer tools that you're talking about, like the all-in-ones, they have all of those things baked in. So it'll be interesting to see like which ones rise to the top, and like, or what's like maybe the backlash, if there is a backlash at some point about connectivity, deliverability, and stuff like that.
I think there's going to be a big M&A piece coming for these, because said CFOs are just not going to sign off on it. They're like, why do I need to spend another X grand when we've got this? And also those vendors that have gone to this platform approach, they're going to say, okay, well, we better just acquire this because that's a good add-on for us.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a bit more of that coming up as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe.
And I think it goes back to actually, it's like sometimes like less is more, because there's less tools to distract reps, and they can just stay in one place and focus and do good work. But it also means that for maybe the leaders and the managers of these teams, they're going to have to go like deep in the adoption and the utilization of a tool before the CFO is going to let them start to purchase more things.
Yeah, I mean, I can say with story at Snowflake, the CFO would be looking at utilization of Salesforce, and if a sales rep had not used Salesforce for a week, and if they weren't on PTO, he would remove their license. And then that would be a very tough conversation to be having with your sales director as to why you've not been on Salesforce. But
Yeah,
in looked at that level now, that you have to use these tools, or then we don't need them. So
yeah,
that was quite fun to
interesting. I can imagine that some fear into some reps.
Yeah, and it was happening, and there was those conversations happening, so it was quite interesting.
Fair. Okay, interesting. So just on that, I assume the CFO has someone in his team going and checking it all like weekly or like monthly, or?
Yeah, CFO was pretty powerful at Snowflake. He
I can imagine.
he was in charge of a lot of things. It was CFO in name only. He was doing a lot.
Fair. Wow. So that's really interesting. Like, we've covered some leadership there. We've covered where we think the tech market is going now. Let's try and tie those together, maybe for SDR leaders. Like, if you're an SDR leader right now, what tools, or how would you suggest they think about tools over the next couple of years? Is it about utilizing and creating more capacity for their team? Is it about getting them the most out of what they've got? Is it getting best in breed?
I would look at it in a way of admin time that your teams do currently, and then look at where you are currently in terms of admin time. You want to get that number as close to 0 minutes as possible, because we did a straw poll in one of our London meetups a couple of months ago, where I asked how much time is your team doing on admin tasks, and we had people still had their hands up when we said over 3 hours a day of admin.
Yeah, I remember. I was shocked.
And if you think that's 3 hours a day, that's 15 hours a week. That's 2 days, 2 full days of admin time. So that means that headcount is working at 60% capacity. And so if we can reduce that number as close to possible, then we're going to see an increase in productivity, increase of output. So I think that's the number they should be looking at, and then figuring out then the process, everything that we can do to get that number as less as possible. That'd be my big thing, I would say.
And I think what that also then creates, I've spoken about this a few times, is it's going to create a clear like line where your best reps, because they're more empowered and they've got more time back, they're just going to start to pull up to like a much higher level of performance. And you'll be able to see more quickly the reps who just aren't interested, the reps who don't really want to be in maybe sales, and it was just a good job. And I think there's going to be less and less sort of like hiding places for those reps, which I think is probably a good thing for the industry, like on a wider level. But I think if you're at like the SDR, be making sure you're getting as much help, as much training, as much coaching as possible. If that admin time's been taken away from you, you need to upskill and use that extra time to upskill and ask for coaching, ask for help. I think that's what managers, once they get that time down to as close to zero, like you say, that time they get back should be for better coaching and upskilling.
Yeah, 100%. And it will be in less SDRs as well, as you said. But we've built in a redundancy with headcount currently because of that time with admin. So it would just mean that we have more productive reps, and then also those reps are more likely to be our future talent for the
Yeah,
business. So I think that there's all these good lagging indicators that will come from it.
yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Really insightful as always, Dave. I want to go to our like build with Stakki section now and understand one of the maybe recent stacks that you've had to look at, and then some of the changes you thought about making. So I'll share our screen and let's talk it through. What, just before we dive in, whilst I put it up, what was like maybe the structure of the team that you've got in mind?
Yeah. So it was a company that was had no marketing engine. Um, it was 100% outbound. Um, we managed to get a named account list built because it was just go after whatever for a long period of time. But then the infrastructure that they had was really minimal. It was literally what was in Salesforce, but that data was bad. It was LinkedIn Sales Nav. It was Cognizant, and it was uh, they used Sales Loft as a sales engagement platform, and then they had a dialer as well, whose name is
What was the CRM? Just
it was Salesforce.
yeah, cool. So when you went in, they had Salesforce, you mentioned LinkedIn, mentioned Cognizant,
Yeah,
and then you mentioned the dialer as well.
yeah. Whose name
Classical?
Cloud Talk. Yeah.
Cool. And it was
So
kind of that simple without the marketing support. Oh, it was Salesloft?
yeah, Salesloft as well.
Salesloft. And so kind of like fairly traditional outbound, not much marketing support, and people were just going after whatever accounts they thought might be a good fit.
Yep, pretty much.
What problems did that cause you?
Lots.
What caused the team?
It was it, you were just um shotgunning everywhere,
Yeah,
trying to figure out who would be a good fit, and there was no data analysis made on what would be the companies with the biggest intent for us
yeah,
to go after. And that was one of my big things to try and look at was, okay, let's look at, if we have a target account list, who should we be going after within these accounts?
yeah,
That was one of my big what trying to look at immediately, um,
yeah.
and then go from there. That was really kind of the key.
Cool. So we're trying to get better account prioritization, more systematic sort of outbound, to then build better insights, better consistency, so that you can then start to get a compound effect, I guess, from all of that insight, right?
Yeah, correct.
What was the thought process, and what was the tech that you started to maybe swap out, swap in, and adjust?
Yeah, so the kind of the main piece was the kind of account intent at the top level. Once we had the once we knew the target account list, and we wanted to try and understand, okay, which of these are going to have a high propensity to talk to us,
Yeah,
uh, and then we wanted to create like this automated flow where those names and those accounts would get enriched by a waterfall enrichment, uh, and then have that all pull into our our sales engagement platform for the teams to just action those 50 accounts a day, 50 prospects a day.
yeah. And so, which tools do we start looking at?
So we looked at loan scale, upsell.
Great tool.
Yeah, shout out. Um,
So upsell is going to allow your reps to source the contacts, move them into sort of their CRM and into Salesloft at like a very quick, very consistent manner, whilst it also can do waterfall enrichment. Loan scale is going to help with enriching the existing database and prioritizing the right accounts and monitoring those. And that's all happening within kind of like your existing database within the CRM rather than another external tool having to be pulled in and synced up.
And that was really critical to me as well, is just have one place for
Yeah.
reps to go into. Because they were just, they had so much admin time with research.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to really reduce that.
Yeah. And so was that the main thing there? Because when you look at you got Dialer, you got Salesloft, if the reps are already, I guess, like proficient in using them, they like those. Did you keep those? And then it was actually just needed the loan scale and considering the upsell additions to allow them to work.
Yeah, I was looking for an alternative to Salesloft because the functionality that it has, for the cost of it, it didn't make sense to keep it. So I was looking at some alternative sales engagement platforms,
Cool.
to really help just reduce cost, but also increase productivity.
Yeah. And from memory, you were looking at some of like, was it Kronos and stuff like that?
Chrono, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ample Market was also another option as well that we're looking at. Because it would give us more functionality and at a reduced cost level as well.
Yeah. And did you keep LinkedIn Sales Navigator for everyone, or?
Yeah, I don't. We did. It was because it was a long-term contract, so we couldn't get out of it.
Yeah. And you kept Cognism?
Yeah, for the same reason.
Yeah. And so I think with those, if you end up with sort of a loan scale or an upsell in, you can reduce. Some companies take this route, and I think it's always a good option. You can reduce your Cognizant licenses. Not everyone needs the license, but you can plug it. You can have one or two licenses and have it plug straight into your CRM and enrich the gaps that maybe a loan scale or upsell won't find, because those two with their waterfall enrichment are going to give you good coverage, and that's where you help reduce that cost. Excellent. So was that kind of the main changes that you made, or anything else worth mentioning?
That was the major ones. There were other and slight secondary pieces, but this was really where I wanted to get it fixed, and then have this embed for 6 months. Then the plan was then for there to be other pieces looked at, but this was kind of the main things.
Excellent. And the end result of that was more like a more centralized, consistently updated database and reference point for your reps, more consistent workflow, less admin time every morning, better prioritization of accounts.
Yep, correct. No, that was just the major piece that I wanted, was just that reduce that admin time as close to zero as possible. And then we were able to then focus on other productivity metrics for the team. But I wanted to get this hurdle cleared first.
Yeah, excellent. And this is more and more like we've kind of touched on bringing things to a more like that all-in-one type platform. And that waterfall enrichment, which people are like really familiar with now, I feel like that was kind of one of the first areas that started to happen. People are really familiar with that now, and in like as a data concept, I think everyone should really be considering: do I get like the best regional provider plus waterfall enrichment, and then which is the primary one? But I see that more and more.
Yep.
I guess, how did that end result? Did you have enough time to see like how that affected the reps day to day? Did it start to actually have the impact you wanted?
Unfortunately, no. I had to leave just as we were starting to get everything acquired. So I can't. So that's what it looked like in theory. I don't know what it looks like yet in practical. I'll need to come back to you on that.
Cool. All good. All good. Well, look, Dave, been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. What's like, if you got a passing piece of advice for like SDR leaders right now who might be a bit confused on their role as a leader, where there's more and more tech being thrown at them, and there's more and more AI being mentioned, like what would you do in their shoes over the next couple of months?
Cheap plug, come and join SDR Leaders of EMEA, USA. But the other thing would be just get, even if not part of that, get yourself a mentor in the company, and you have to proactively go and do that yourself. People are not just going to say, yeah, I'll be a mentor. You've got to go and ask them, and don't be afraid to ask people in different business units at more senior levels. It's a badge of honor for people to have that. So I would just, because you just get it from a different perspective about how you should be looking at your business, because in the end, SDR is the same kind of business unit as it is to customer success, as it is to sales, as it is to professional services. It's still the same kind of leadership principles. It's just different aspects of the funnel. So get yourself a mentor. That would be my thing.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Dave. Been an absolute pleasure, as always, talking to you, mate. Everyone, if you can please like, subscribe, and follow us. It really helps us grow, so we can do more of these and share more clips. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.